So here we have the 2019 higher paper. This is paper 2 and it's question 10, which focuses on factorising equations. Now, what we've got to do in this question is first we've got to show something as a factor, and then we've got to fully factorise beyond that. Now, for this type of question, we need to make sure that we're up on, well, factorising to begin with, but also synthetic division or algebraic long division as well. If we can do those techniques, we'll actually be able to manage this question fairly quickly and straightforwardly. Now, the first one, show that x plus 3 is a factor of this. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. One way is by setting this equal to 0 and then getting x equals -3 and substituting in. If you get an answer of 0, you're winning. Another way is the way I prefer. So again, set x plus 3 equal to 0 and then get x equals 3 and use synthetic division. So if x is equal to -3 here, and I put the coefficients of each of these here, so I've got 3, 10, 1, -8 and -6. If I put those there, and I use synthetic division, what I'll get here at the end as a remainder is 0, if and only if this is a factor. So let's start. So we get 3 there. If I multiply going up, and I get -9. Add going down, and I get 1. Go up this way, times again at -3. Down that way, I get -2. Going up that way, multiply again, I get 6. Down this way, I get -2. Going up that way, I multiply, and I get 6. Down this way, and I get 0. So I've got my 0 here that I was after. So what I can do is, therefore, since the remainder equals 0, x plus 3 is a factor. Now you have to remember to put this sort of statement here. You have to say, since the remainder is 0, x plus 3 is a factor. If you don't write anything and you just get to this point here, nah, you'll not get anything for it. You've not interpreted the answer. Yeah, and if you get to this point and you get here and you put x plus 3 as a factor, again, you've not interpreted it really. You have to say what this is and what you're basing that on. So you have to state something about the factor remainder being 0, so it's a factor then. So then we want to go into part B. Now you'll notice part B says hence or otherwise. So depending upon the technique you use, sometimes you'll get to a point where you can read off the next stage and then you can move on from there. Now this one here, the method I've used, I can actually take this and use it to get to the next stage of factorising. Because I know this is a factor here, the x plus 3, these here are the coefficients of the next power down. So these there will be the coefficients of the cubic I get if I was to take x plus 3 out as a factor of this initial function here. So what I could write is I can then say fine, so x plus 3x to the power of 4 plus 10x cubed plus x squared minus 8x minus 6 equals, that first bracket, x plus 3, 3x cubed plus x squared minus 2x minus 2. So there we go, we've done our first step of factorising there. Now what we have to do is then continue on. So what I can do, again, is use synthetic division on this cubic. If it was a quadratic, I'd be able to hopefully use one of my 3 main forms of factorising to do it. But because it's a cubic, what I'm going to do is use synthetic division again with the coefficients here. So I'm going to put my coefficients in here. I've got 3, 1, -2 and -2. And what I'm going to do, if I notice here, if I put x equal to 1 in, this will become 0. So I know that x equals 1 is a factor. So I can then use this and use my synthetic division to get to a point where what I can do is read off the quadratic from there. So I think I've got 2 there, 2 here, and 0. And that 0 there just confirms what I've said, that it is a factor because there's no remainder. So I can then take it on one more step. And I'll have x plus 3, x, now remember x is equal to 1, so it's x minus 1 here in the bracket. and I've then got 3x squared plus 4x plus 2. So now I've got to that stage there where I'm at this point. Now what I've got to do is look for factors of this here. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is focus on the quadratic formula. Now this is the sort of one we're looking at it instantly. You know, you can't really see anything straight off. So let's focus on the quadratic formula to help us. However, if I'm using the quadratic formula and I focus on the discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac, what I'll get is 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2. 4 squared is 16, so it's then going to be 16, take away 4 3s are 12, times 2 is 24, which is then negative 8. My discriminant is negative. So because my discriminant is negative, I then cannot factorize. So actually, this here is my final answer. Because we cannot factorize this quadratic anymore. That's our final solution. So there we go. We've reached the end of the question. We've reached where we want to go. We don't have to do that next step of factorizing. Now this sort of question, fairly typical of coming up. The first part tends to be worth a couple of marks. In this case it's worth 2. Firstly for your method, so my synthetic division gets the first mark and then my interpretation gets the second. There's 5 marks available for the second part here. Now these come into play firstly when you identify the cubic and you start using your synthetic division. Then when you identify your factor and you work it through to show it's a factor, here's your second mark. Third mark is being able to get to this point where we've got a quadratic. Fourth mark is getting to the part where we know b squared minus 4ac is negative 8, so knowing to use the discriminant, and then being able to state that we cannot factorize, and that this is our final solution. So we'd say since b squared minus 4ac equals negative 8 is less than 0, cannot factorize 3x squared plus 4x plus 2, so this is our final solution here. We have to make sure we interpret that. Make sure you state what it means and why it's vital and important. If not, there's no point in you doing it. You've just wasted time and you'll lose yourself silly marks for the communication step. Make sure you do it. You want 5 marks out of that second part. That's how you get all 5 of them. Show them you know what you're doing and it's not just a fluke. Make sure you put the values in as well, because just stating that b squared minus 4ac is less than 0 for this without putting any numbers in isn't proving it. It's just like you're saying that to try and make your life a bit easier so you didn't hate to factorize anymore. So make sure you have all the appropriate working and you follow it through. Get them right. 5 marks can make all the difference.